Hey there, Christ Church. This is Pastor Clint. Many of you have heard about one of our deacons, Taylor Kidwell, moving down to Guatemala in January of 2022. We just wanted to take a moment and give her a chance to share her heart with you about the history behind that and why she's moving down there.
Hi Christ Church, this is Taylor Kidwell, your deacon of the Rabinal Achi Partnership. I have been at Christ Church since its founding and planting 5 years ago, and before that I was at Desert Springs for several years. I am more or less originally from Albuquerque, although I didn't grow up here in my younger years. I have been here since high school, and New Mexico has always been home, even when I lived in different areas. And I studied at the University of New Mexico. I studied Latin American Studies and Spanish and Portuguese, and then after graduation I started working at Faith Comes by Hearing, and I have been there for the last 14 and a half years. The Rabinal Achi are a people group in Guatemala, and it is a Mayan people group. There are several different Mayan languages throughout Guatemala, and there are a couple different forms of, or languages of Achi, and so the Rabinal Achi is one of them. And they have a unique culture, unique customs, and they are a kind and generous and hardworking people. They are very faithful, and those who are already believers love the gospel, and I am just so excited to come alongside them in continuing to encourage that. So several years ago, I had the opportunity to go on my first trip to San Miguel Chicaj, which is the community that Carol and Rodrigo Barrera lived in. They were the translators of the Achi New Testament, and Desert Springs initially started a relationship with them many years ago. And over the years, the Gregorys, Karen and David Gregory from Desert Springs Church, have been involved in that partnership from the very beginning. And so Karen was my high school math teacher, and she shared with me her heart for the Achi women and their hearing of the gospel, and an opportunity for them to gather and talk about the gospel's impact on their lives. And there just isn't a natural, or wasn't at the time, a natural context for that to happen. And she said, hey, this is something that we'd love to be praying about. And so I started praying about that, and that generated a desire to go to Guatemala to this language community for the first time with Desert Springs. And I just had my hands open over the years and my heart open to say, Lord, if there is an opportunity and you see a way to use me in that community, that you would send me. So over the years, I continued to take trips to Guatemala, and I continued to build relationships with people in the community, including our ministry partners there, and just continued to pray and to hear from our partners and learn about their hearts and the needs of the community, both physical and spiritual. And then in the fall of 2020, we started the Christ Church Academy, where we were working through the 9 Mark's books. There are more than 9, but ultimately gospel, focused on how the gospel can be primary in the local church, and about church planting and what that looks like. And by God's grace, because it was during COVID, we all were doing that class on Zoom, and we were able to invite our Rabinal Achi partners to join us. And that was such a gift to us and to them. And so we ended up having a separate Zoom session just to be able to connect with them and allow them to share their heart and to share their context and to discuss how do we apply these principles in our local church context? Or how do we not see these principles being lived out in our context? And what do we do about that? How do we pursue those things? How do we work on those things? How do we start praying about those things? So it was a very challenging but also very encouraging time of seeing their hearts transformed and just grow in their desire to see a strengthened, gospel-focused church in their local community. Once we made it through the 13 marks of a healthy church and all of those great discussions, I just continued to pray and felt the Lord really stirring a desire to come alongside them, to continue to be praying towards that end, but to also join them in discipleship and encouraging a model of discipleship in the local church and among the women in the community. And so it really felt like a culmination of years of the Lord working in my heart. And I gathered a group of friends and pastors, some of you, to pray with me and to help me discern, is this really what the Lord would have? Are there any areas that you would say, oh, Taylor, maybe you should think differently about this, or this isn't the time? But through those conversations and that time of prayer, it just really seemed the Lord was moving this forward, and even opened opportunities through work to continue with Faith Comes by Hearing. And so by God's grace, I will be able to work remotely from Guatemala part-time with Faith Comes by Hearing, and also be able to be locally in the community of San Miguel Chicaj alongside our partners and be serving them through discipleship. My hope and prayer for the Achi community over the next 5 to 10 years is that the Lord would raise up a local church, that He may allow for a church to be planted that is healthy and gospel focused, and that encourages discipleship and is an example of discipleship in the local community, and that those disciples of Christ may live out the gospel in a way that is a light that displays the hope of Christ. Please pray for me as I make this move and as I enter into a new culture and live life using a different language, and am entering into new relationships and have a new home and a new church, as well as I enter into a local body there in San Miguel Chicaj. Pray that I would have humility to learn, and that I would be reliant on the Holy Spirit for His grace to meet each need, and that I would not be anxious for the next new thing, but faithfully wait on the Lord to provide my needs in each moment. And you can be praying for language learning. I do desire to learn Achi. I know that language learning is not a quick or easy process, but you can be praying for that. Please also pray for relationships, that the Lord would prepare my heart for the relationships that He will bring to me, and please pray for others' hearts, particularly for women in the community, that whether it be one friend initially or many, that the Lord would be preparing those relationships ahead of time. And finally, I just want to say thank you for your prayers, and thank you for just being such a wonderful, loving, encouraging church. We do have a healthy, gospel-focused church, and that is something to be thankful for. And so thank you to our pastors, Thank you to all of you, and I just continue to covet your prayers in this time of transition.